Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my colleagues who are with us electronically, and Paul and Rob, who are in the chamber with us this afternoon. And I've also got Clive, Craig, and Tammy either side of me. So welcome all to this afternoon's meeting of the Margam Crematorium Joint Committee. I'll go straight on to the agenda. Item 1 is Chairperson's announcements. I don't have any. Item 2, are there any declarations of interest of anybody? No, I don't see any. Moving on to item 3 then, minutes of the previous meeting, which are in the pack on pages 3 to 6. I'll go through them first for accuracy, and then if there's any matters arising, then we'll take them after. So on the first page there, we got present, then we got items 1, 2, 3, and 4, which go over leaf to items 5 and 6, and ends on page 5 with item 7. Are we all happy with the true record?
Yes, Ted, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thanks very much. Have we got any matters arising out of those minutes? All okay? Okay, thank you very much. So moving on then to agenda item 4, which is the business plan update. They're on pages 7 to 18 within the agenda pack. Unfortunately, there's nobody here from environment to take us through anything. So I don't know whether Clive and Craig, or Craig. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Chair. So I apologise. This is probably not going to be the most technical, if anyone responds to certain matters, but I'll certainly try my best anyway for that. So members will recall that in the last meeting, we presented what was our business plan and service plan for the forthcoming year, where we were talking about some of the strategies and work that we would be undertaking. So the purpose of this report today is just to give you an update as to where we are in respect of various matters. And there were a couple of different bits throughout then that just to get some sort of decisions from members going forward. So what I propose to do is I'll take each one in turn, and obviously what I'll do is I'll pause after I've done each one, Chair. Yep. So if anyone has any questions before we can move on then to the different elements. So proposal 1 was obviously to continue developing our business continuity strategy and identify the main opportunities, threats and constraints. We do that in line with the Neath Talbot Council corporate policies in respect of service resilience, health and safety, and all of the various different matters that we have in place. But also as well, we've got good relationships with our local health board colleagues, various funeral directors, and the industry in general via the FBCA. So we're able to keep abreast of those various developments. Clive, Tracy, our deputy superintendent and our chair, also attended the FBCA conference earlier on in the year, where obviously some of the new operational models which are being made available and some of the various threats the service are discussed. So we do have that wide-ranging update coming through to us so we can keep abreast of developments. From a health and safety perspective, obviously crucial within the nature of the work that we undertake. We had our audit undertaken by the NPT Health and Safety team just over a few weeks ago now, and everything came out of that very well. A couple of minor amendments to risk assessments and working practices just to reflect current new standards and the way in which people operate. But all in all, everything came back well in that regard, and we're just finalising now the implementation of those risk assessments and communicating them to staff. So that's number 1, Chair.
Any comments or questions on that item? No. Okay.
Great. Number 2 then was obviously our crematorium website. We have a crematorium officer, Rodri, who has been working very diligently behind the scenes developing a sort of template website which will highlight all of the various different services and the different way we want to try and promote the crematorium. We are now linking in with our corporate digital services colleagues, obviously, to put that model into the NPT standards. Obviously, when we create websites as a public authority, there are various different standards that we need to go with, and also to embed the various different software that would be needed. So, for example, online calendars and online information to make it more user-friendly for the general public. And also when it comes to things like renewing memorial vases, renewing benches, those facilities will be able to be utilised online. So the software just needs to be embedded to enable that to happen. So that work is really well. We're hoping we'll be finished by the end of this year with it. And what I propose then, Chair, is I'll do an active demonstration to the committee once we have the final website ready to go.
Okay, all right with that? Yeah, Okay, sounds great.
Book of Remembrance, you've heard us mention that we will be refining the Book of Remembrance and creating a new facility there, which is more equality proof and to make it easier for members of the public to have access to it. Part of that as well is also going to be linked in with the online systems that we have. The provider which we were intending to use is no longer really operating at present. So we've gone to a new organisation. They're on site now to do some delivery on site at present and on site in the coming days, sorry, in that sense, to start looking at the design and the fit. And once it's ordered, they should be on site hopefully quite soon to install it. So we're hoping that will be done now by the end of this year as well.
Okay, just a quick one from me, Clive. The current entries or the entries in the current book, they're going to be transferred over to the new book, or we're going to have
the Sorry, Chair. The entries, excuse me. The books will remain. Whoever the provider is, the books will remain as they are. And those entries that have been placed in the books will be transferred to a digital version as well. But the books that are there will be kept there.
okay, Clive. Craig.
Great. You would have heard us mention that we were developing a sort of more of a formal forum for communication with funeral directors. It happens informally, regularly, as you can imagine, with funeral directors back and forth to the crematorium, sometimes on a daily basis or a few times a day even. But we decided we were going to put a more formal process in place so we can do some consultations with stakeholders and make sure then that we're communicating all different changes. We were originally going to hold that in the autumn, but we are awaiting now some updated guidance from medical referees as part of the new forms that need to be created. So we're going to wait until we've got all of that to make it more of a meaningful discussion ultimately with funeral directors. And Neath Talbot members may be aware that our register office is in the process of developing what we call a civil celebrant service, where we will be able to offer civil celebrations of life and those types of services for the general public. So we're going to dovetail the forum that we're creating with funeral directors to give them an opportunity as well to present and hopefully to demonstrate how we're going to be providing those additional services then going forward.
Okay. No indications, Craig, so...
Great. We talked about increasing our record systems and obviously trying to modernise the service and move into different ways of working. One of the processes that we've started with is our debtor system, which is effectively the payment system as to when we make contact with funeral directors. We are now looking at invoices being issued to save the day-to-day handling of checks and individual payments being made on a sort of frequent basis. The system was trialled with a number of funeral directors. It's worked really well, so we've now rolled that out to all funeral directors, I believe, now within who use us the crematorium, and it's in a more modern ways and less administrative process in driving forward. So that particular element does work. So embracing the digital opportunities upon us, we can continue enhancing the service going forward.
Okay.
Okay, so this is one that we had to take a little bit of work on, which our environment colleagues have been looking at. We mentioned about the refurbishment of the outside toilet block. We did some investigations about the best way in which to do this, and the two proposals which were given to us were either a refurbishment of the existing toilet block or in essence demolishing and rebuilding it. As you can imagine, Margam Crematorium is a listed building, so we had to have some sort of preliminary discussions with CADU, and they confirmed we wouldn't necessarily be able to demolish the existing toilets because they are brought under the listed status. We could look at some options for refurbishing that building and then building a new toilet block in a different location, but it was felt perhaps that the best way of trying to take this forward would be, instead of rebuilding, would be to modernise the current facilities which are ultimately there. So the proposal ultimately now is that rather than go through a new build or go through any sort of listed building consent, which would take a long time ultimately to action, officers now will just look at that refurbishment, and they are in the process of finalising the design work associated with it, and will be going out to tender soon. That funds have already built into our base budget as one of our capital works programs, so we can crack on and implement that as soon as we've got the final design back.
Okay. Happy with that? Yep. Oh,
Yeah,
Andrew,
just
do you
one
want to
thing.
come in?
Yes, please. Sorry to interrupt you. What will you use whilst the refurbishment's going on? Porta cabin toilets or something similar? Have we got anything planned for that?
More than likely, we've got water cabins we will be considering. We've also got toilet facilities actually inside the chapel as well, which members of the public are able to use. So the aim will be to do this in a sort of piecemeal fashion, not to take everything out of action straight away, but there will be facilities made available for the general public whilst that work is ongoing.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul?
Well, thanks, Chair. Part of the toilet block at the back is there like a room for the grass cutting guy up there? Will that be incorporated into the new design?
It will indeed, and hopefully we can try and make it a little bit more easy to access it in that sense, and obviously more appealing to sit in probably than what it is at the moment. So we'll be looking at that as part of the process.
Beyond
Yes.
to me if I didn't ask, you know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, great.
The landscaping of the external area to the chapel, we've spoken about that in some of our previous meetings, and one of the points ultimately that was raised was about the position of the canopy. Now, again, we've had some discussions with CADU because obviously of the listed building status, and they explained that the canopy is not something we would look to be able to put on the right of the path. As the individuals exit, their view being the visual impact would be too great and take away from the building design. So any proposed works, though we have identified, will require full listed building consent once signed off. So the officers of the property regeneration section, it is included on their forward work programme. Obviously, they've got quite a large work programme they work into in respect of NPT projects, but they will be now progressing all of those matters. Once we have a final design and indicative cost, that will just then be brought back for the committee for final approval, which we hope will be at some point in early 2024.
Okay, don't see any indications. Thank you.
Okay, so this one now that gets very technical for me in that sense. So we were looking at general decorative work, which is the painting of the building and general decorative work in the chapel. It was originally thought that the external coating was a simple masonry paint. However, further investigations have revealed it's actually been coated with a concrete protection coating. So it required us to get some sort of consultancy support from the organisation Sika, who are the manufacturing of the existing coating. They raised a few concerns about the current surface and its bond into the concrete in certain areas. Nothing structural in that regard. I would add the place of the building in any sort of concern, but there were just minor little points that would need to be addressed going forward, and there were some areas of concrete spoiling. So what it's been proposed now then ultimately is that obviously instead of having to look at a simple repaint, we need to engage a SEEK-approved contractor to produce a full schedule of repairs and quantify the products and specification for tendering purposes for us to enable to crack on and do that. So what we're asking at this stage is for just a delegated authority from the Joint Committee for the Technical Director to take this quotation and then approve it in consultation with the Chair, of course, subject to the works being within our existing budget allocation. If it comes back obviously higher than anticipated, we will bring it back to the committee. It's not anticipated to be the case, but we want to just get on now and put those arrangements forward.
Okay, happy with that? Okay, thank you.
The next element was the development of the Memorial Garden area. So that's the area ultimately as coming up the drive. We've had some very interesting conversations with our biodiversity team in Neath, Talbot, because they see that there will also be ways in amongst all of this to enhance the biodiversity of the area in line with some of the strategies that the local authorities and Welsh Government are promoting at present. They're coming down to site shortly to go through the various matters and to see if we can come up with some potential designs and solutions. And hopefully then that will come back before the committee for their final approval. But I think it's an interesting opportunity to see what we can do different in that area, embracing the natural setting ultimately that we find ourselves in and the grounds that we operate from.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Wi-Fi. It's moving in the right direction. It's a little bit slower than we would be hoping, but we are hoping now this will be resolved imminently in the coming weeks at least. Sorry, can I do it? Oh, actually, we have an update. They're coming on Monday to actually finish it in that sense. So hot off the press. So what has happened over the last couple of weeks is that the Public Services Broadband Aggregation Service, which we were using, have effectively laid all the cables throughout the drive going up to the main building. What we've been waiting for is for them to just now do the internal connection back into the main building, which would enable us to access the service. And as Clive just mentioned, whilst we've been waiting a couple of weeks, they're now coming on Monday to finalise it. So hot off the press there, chap.
Okay, good. Right. Yeah, good.
We are doing some work at the moment throughout the council, of course, looking at energy efficiency measures in respect of buildings as part of the move to net zero in 2030. The council commissioned Faithful and Gould to do some work for them in respect of this area. Margam Crematorium has now been included within that report, and that will give us a roadmap to net zero in respect of the building and some of the practices, obviously, that are operated at the crematorium. So we wait that report with bated breath, and then we'll bring that back to the committee to discuss with an action plan as to how we can take that forward.
Okay. Right. Excellent. That's great.
Ongoing training of staff is obviously something we do on a regular basis anyway. We've made sure, as you'll see from a later report, that all our crematorium staff have had the requisite FBCA training, and as they're being trained, we register them on the Certified Cremator Technicians Register. And we have one member of staff who will be completing their training hopefully now before the end of this year. And the decision as to whether an individual wishes to be on that register is something for that individual member of staff to determine, but we've encouraged it and given them every opportunity and support to enable them to do that, including any refresher training ultimately would need to be undertaken. But as it stands at the moment, as all our staff are qualified and trained by the one who will be completing that now at the end of this year.
Okay, and as Craig said, I think there's a item on the agenda on the same matter coming up later. So, okay, thanks, Craig.
And finally, then the last point on this one, Chair, the open day that we were looking at, we were anticipating that we were going to look at this in the early part of the autumn. My concern was at the time there was still a little bit of uncertainty with regards to some of the works as to when they could take place in respect of the masonry and the general redecorative work. So I didn't want to look at the open day being held whilst all of this work is undertaken. We should have some more firm timescales now over the coming weeks with regards to the programme that we've just spoken about just now, and we'll programme then the open day, and if not by the end of this year, going into early spring next year, Chair, to give members of the public the opportunity to see the building and the operation there.
Okay, no comments on that. Right, thanks, Craig. Obviously, on page 15, at the end of all these items, it says about the financial impact, and it states here that £250,000 has been allocated within the budget to carry out the works. And then overleaf under the recommendations is that we note the current work programme, but we agree on A, which is the progress of the toilet block, and to engage the approved contractor for the repairs. So are we happy to support that as it's written? Okay, all good, right? Thank you very much. Okay, so that's accepted. Excellent. Thanks, Craig. Thanks very much. Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of the fact that this is the second meeting now, which is lacking a technical officer from the Environment Department. That work programme is all about technical management from that department. And we expressed concerns at the last time that there was no technical officers here. There's no one again here today. I don't think that's the clerk or the superintendent's fault. And I think that we need to start thinking about writing a letter to the Environment Department or to the director saying how imperative it is that the officer that is designated to attend these meetings is here, because it's not fair to Craig to answer any technical questions that we've got in relation to this, like the delays and concerns that we had in the last meeting. So it's an observation, Chair, and I don't want your views on it.
No, that's fine, Robin. Craig and I spoke outside of the meeting about the lack of officers from the environment. I mean, I'm quite happy to ping a letter off just to find out exactly what's what, if committee feel that way. Or...
Well, I would actually propose that we do on your behalf, Chair, if you would write it.
I think it is, the important point you make is the fact that there is technical stuff in here,
yeah,
and it's out of Craig's remit, and we're not getting a proper picture then.
Correct.
Okay. Are we all happy with that then? So we just ping a couple of lines off to environment? Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks, Rob. Okay, moving on then to agenda item 6, and this is the reclamation scheme. Agenda item 5, beg your pardon, the reclamation scheme.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, members, the crematorium has for a number of years operated the scheme through the ICCM, where metals remaining after a cremation have been retained and recycled, with the proceeds being donated to bereavement-based charities nominated by members. You will be aware that many thousands of pounds have been donated over the years. To me, the main downside is the company that operate this scheme on behalf of the ICCM are based in Holland, and therefore the carbon footprint is enormous. A new company named RS Bruce, who is actually fronted by Jim Nicol, formerly of Facultative Technologies, and they are the company responsible for the installation of the cremators. And we have spoken at length about this new scheme. Members will note from the report that the recommendation is that we approve the change to RS Bruce and consider a local bereavement-based charity for the forthcoming year. The benefits, there's a much lower carbon footprint. They operate a fleet of certainly hybrid and electric vehicles, and where collections with the existing company are normally twice a year. If we need additional collections, well, this company can arrange them at fairly short notice. That's basically the report, Chair, and I would ask for the recommendations as they are.
Thank you, Clive. Can I just add on to the back of that the previous company we had, yes, we've as the report says, we've donated £44,000 previously from recycled metals down there. And this new company are going to give us a 33% increase based on the current level. So it can only be a win-win for us. I mean, we still getting the metals taken away, and we're able to offer an increase then to whatever charity we consider. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and we do need to consider, and a proposal is required from members for a local bereavement-based charity for the forthcoming year.
So am I right to, well, it's in the report. I mean, we've donated to T Haven previously, have we? Yes. Children's Hospice, okay. So is that two proposals, Craig? Oh, sorry, Andrew. Sorry.
I was just going to endorse a no-brainer, really, that we use that with the environmental impact as well. But I mean, it's in the recommendation, so that's all I wanted to say, to be honest.
Okay, well, thanks. Okay, so we'll do the two recommendations all together. So the first recommendation will be that we go with the new company, RS Bruce. But I think we need to, or Craig has suggested, we need to have a discussion, if need be, on what our chosen charity is for the donations to go to.
Just to add then, Chair, in that sense for it, in the past, when we've looked at the nominations for previous charities, we've nominated T Haven in the past, we've used T Owen, we've used Cruise as well. So there are a number of different organisations which operate on a local basis. It's up to members to consider if they want to go elsewhere or to look at other organisations in that regard. T Haven obviously is a locally based organisation which have received significant funds from us. What you may wish to consider is continue with that for a further year, and you reevaluate this on an annual basis. But of course, it's within members' discretion to consider whichever bereavement based organisations they would wish.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, being perfectly honest, you and I have sat on this committee since this came in, and we've always struggled to find bereavement charities that are local or will be impacted by the donation. Might I suggest a little bit of work by officers to see who else is tied in with this scheme and what charities they look at, and then perhaps we can have a couple of names that we could make a selection from. You know, we've probably all got our own personal preferences in relation to charities. I was only looking this morning on a survey with, you know, prostate cancer, Cancer UK Research, Macmillan, and so on and so forth. Although they're all cancer charities, people don't just die of cancer, you know, there's heart and so on and so forth. Can I suggest that if we got to stick for this year with this, then we stick with what we got, but ask officers to do a bit of digging with those that are involved in this game to see where they go and what they consider. It'll give us a better idea, I think.
Absolutely, Councillor Jones, that's no problem at all. We'll bring a report back, obviously, for future years then in that sense, with some details and different organisations that could be available to the committee.
Andrew?
Yeah, I know you want to give to charities, but do you do any for remembrance, like as the memorial garden for people that's lost their lives in industry throughout South Wales in Aberafan ward? That's pretty much racked and ruined. We try to keep it as best as we can. But would you give a donation to that upkeep or to have improvements done there, or is it just for other charities? I don't know if it is a charity, to be honest, but it's just that type of, can you donate to that type of thing as well?
I was just speaking to Clive just now, Councillor Dacey. We'd probably have to look at the specific terms of the refs. We don't believe so, because they do tend to focus on more bereavement-based charities and the services of people ultimately in bereavement. But I think that can be the purpose of this exercise now. We will go back and look at the terms of reference ultimately as to where the funding is capable of being utilised, and we will bring you as many different options as possible for the committee ultimately to consider, and hopefully then you can make a determination as to which ones you wish to support. And you are free in this process to potentially change on an annual basis, a 6-monthly basis, whichever way you wish to look at it. So we can try and find a structure that maybe accomplishes all the wishes of what the committee wish to try and bring in some format, and covering obviously the 2 constituencies and in 2 county boroughs the same way as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, on. Anybody else? Clive, does the with the current contract, have we got a contract where it finishes, or when do we start with Bruce?
Well, I would suggest that we start with RS Bruce from the 1st of January.
Right. So would we
The last distribution from the ICCM scheme is at the end of this year, and that's what we've already nominated for. So I would suggest going with RS Bruce from January.
Okay, so that fits in with the suggestion, and because if we get our next payment at the end of the year, we've got a little bit of time to decide where that.
That's right. That's correct.
In line with the suggestion.
Yes.
What I would.
Sorry, Craig. In the meantime, I'll also speak to Jim Nicholl and just perhaps get some definition of the bereavement-based charities as far as this new company is concerned.
What I would suggest then, Chair and members, if you are happy today, is to approve the use of RS Bruce as the organisation, but we defer the decision as to which locally based charity you wish to nominate until our next meeting in December, and at which point then we'll have plenty of time to be able to make that nomination to RS Bruce, if members are happy to endorse that.
Okay.
Yeah, move that, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. So moving on then, agenda item 6, complaints and compliments from April 22 to March 23. Clive?
Thank you, Chair. Well, like any other organisation, we do get the odd complaint, but we are lucky that we also get compliments as well, and these are both listed in Appendix 1 of the report. I'm not going to go through each item, but we'll certainly answer questions that members feel need explanation on.
The appendix is on pages 23 to 25. Rob?
Yeah, unfortunately, my iPad is packed in, so I can't refer. But from memory, I was quite surprised that the complaints in relation to the fading of the plaques, that the company said, oh, they replace them free of charge, but they can't guarantee that they won't fade. but then they've said that there's new plaques coming forward that they guarantee for 30 years. You know, I find it amazing that a company are providing us with plaques with an understanding that they may fade, and yet, you know, so I was a little bit concerned about that. Is it the same company that provides the benches, and why did they fade in such a short period of time?
I honestly don't think they've got an answer to that question. But the new plaques are porcelain plaques, which are guaranteed for at least 30 years. It may well be where they're situated within the grounds, because there's a lot of greenery, obviously, in that area. But I am aware that other other crematoria have had the same sort of problems.
If I could come out here, thanks. Is there an increased costs in the difference of the plaques that we'd have to pass on?
The basic plaque costs the same. If they want extras such as, and it is possible with the new plaques to have photographs or literally anything they want, but we get a price for that, and then we obviously the families have to pay that extra on top. But the basic plaque with the basic inscription is the same as the existing plaque.
And finally then, Chair, the compliments that came forward with the staff and the way that they were, and particularly the one that an undertaker had a problem half an hour before a service. It just goes to show how professional that the staff are down in the crematorium, led by yourself, and good job, well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was at a rather large funeral down in Margam about 3 weeks ago, so it was kind of like getting to see what was happening. But it turned out to be quite a larger funeral, and I realised because there were so many of us, I couldn't even get into the chapel. Now, that's no complaint. It's just the size of the building, I suppose. But I noticed that there is a TV screen there showing the life of the person that was deceased. I was just wondering if it was possible to have another screen there so people could actually see the service going on inside the chapel as well, when you get that kind of number that cannot get into the chapel. But on saying that, it was excellent service, excellent sound quality. All the staff are so professional and so caring to the. It was a pleasure. I must be in some way. I shouldn't say that at a funeral. I know that, but it was very well organised and very well good. The only annoying little thing was we couldn't actually see what was going on in the chapel. That's basically it, really. It's just a suggestion, if it's possible, to have some sort of screen there so people, when you do have these rather large funerals, can actually still see when they're stuck in the foyer what's actually going on inside in the chapel. That's basically it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. It's something we have spoken about briefly, and we can progress those talks. It would be possible to have a screen sort of outside the main door of the chapel. Whether that then would be a portable screen, whether it would be a permanent fixture on the wall, and we've then got to look at insurance and all other aspects regarding this. But it's certainly something we can discuss, and we can get the company down to to see if it's feasible. I don't see why it can't be feasible.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point as well, it was actually a question I asked many a year ago about television screens outside the building, and I was actually told at that point that there was actually a concern about the listed status as well, obviously with the TV screen ultimately being there. So if we did want to look at putting anything, it would have to be portable and sort of moved in as and when ultimately required. But certainly we can consider it as part of any sort of future operations if and bring it back to members for consideration if you feel it's something you want to support.
Paul?
Thanks, Chair. I know in Bridgend they have them, but you have a different setup over there. You've got the long corridor going in, and they got one in the corridor, I believe. I remember being outside watching a funeral. In Margam, the door is then outside, aren't you? And that's the difficulty you've got in Margam. You'd have, like you said, to a permanent one there, I think it would be difficult. It'd have to be something you could take in at the end of the day, I would guess. I don't know. But it's difficult there. Different in Bridgend, where you've got that corridor, all the way in, and they do stack outside. People do watch funerals there,
The actual screen in the porch area does show the actual service, unless there's a visual tribute being played throughout the service, and obviously it concentrates on the visual tribute and not the service itself at that point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to mention that if the chapel itself is full, then there is that capacity that the TV screen is in that porchway area. But we also on occasions use the overspill chapel, the smaller chapel, and that also has a screen in there. And I'm not sure how many that caters for, but that is extra capacity that we use as well. And I remember when we had the discussion of sitting and putting the Wesley system in, the problem we had of putting a TV outside was A, vandalism, and B, because of the status of the listing of the building, that Cadw weren't particularly happy about having a TV sat outside the building.
I was going to ask you a question, Clive, which you've answered, because I've similar to Mike, and I suppose most of us I've been down there. I've been outside, standing room only. But because there was no picture tribute, I was able to. The camera was focused on the service. Yeah. So are you saying then, irrespective of how many screens we got down there, if they have a photo montage, you're not going to be able to watch the service anyway?
That is something that we'd have to iron out with the provider. That's the system as it is. But that is something that we'd have to pursue with them. Because
sometimes in some funerals I've been down there, we don't actually see the montage of photographs until the vicar says, we will now,
That's right.
And then the photos come on. But similar to Mike, I was also down there a couple of weeks ago, where all I saw during the service was the montage of photos.
Yeah. If music is chosen and it's treated as a time of reflection and a visual tribute to the deceased, that is a separate separate item during the service. If it's something that the family want a montage of photographs throughout the service, well, that is something that is then played on the screens in chapel. Now, I don't see why they can't change the system that for any external screens, it can show the service itself. But that is something we will pursue. Sorry, Chair, is that something now that we look at screens for outside?
I don't know about screens for outside because of the comments that's been made, but I'd certainly like to a conversation to be had to see if that screen in that standing area could show the service as opposed to just showing the montage of photographs.
And I will also ask the possibilities of a portable screen, one that's taken out.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just for Clive, really, out of interest, Clive, I don't know if you're aware, but RCT have done a similar thing at Lloydcoed. It is in the covered area where the hearse and the cars stop, so it's protected from the elements. I think where we're going to get unstuck is on this issue of listing the building. But if it's possible to have a portable one, I've done funerals and they've been so large that people don't see anything really, only it's sound only, and it would be a wonderful plus for families, be it distant relatives, who would like to have got into the service to have this facility.
I'm not aware of what they've got in Lloydcoed, I must admit. But certainly I know one or two funeral directors from that area, and I can make inquiries and find out exactly what they have got.
It's worth looking at, Clive. It's very, very successful. Large screen TV it is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Rob, do you want to come back?
Yeah, it's something during this discussion now that I've just thought about. If the montage is being shown on the screens and therefore not the service, how do we get away with that in relation to telecasting the service? Because you will see the service being shown, and if the montage comes up, does that then, whoever's reviewing it remotely, does it click over to the montage, or does it stay and they miss the montage and only see the service? So there must be a way of being able to break that cycle so that they can see the montage at the time, but then the service, which is what they've linked into with the webcasting, which is what they want to see. So it was a question that just went over in my mind, because you were saying you either see the montage or you see the service. So I think there's a lot of exploring needs to be done here.
With the webcast, and this is something that we have spoken to them about, and I know one or two funeral directors have spoken to them regarding this as well. Unfortunately, the visual tribute isn't shown with the actual with the streaming of the funeral, with the webcasting. But this is something I can go back to them and chase that up again with them.
Wayne, did you want to come back, or is that legacy?
Sorry, Chair, legacy it is.
Okay, thanks. Okay, before we go off that item, Clive, I know I've spoken to you about this, and I've noticed it every time I go down at the crematorium, the missing flower pots.
This has been a problem for the last couple of years. We just don't know where they disappear to, and the only way around it, we've had enormous amount of complaints regarding that, and the only thing we can do is replace them free of charge. I don't know where they go, and unfortunately CCTV doesn't cover that area, all that area.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, any other questions on what we just heard? No? Okay, thanks very much, Clive. Excellent. Back to you again now for agenda item 7, which is the qualifications gained by the crematorium staff.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to announce that Alex Allen is the latest member of staff to be assessed under the FPCA test scheme. I actually shadowed the assessor for one or two reasons, and he advised me that, in his opinion, Alex was in the top 4 of all those he had assessed in the last 20 odd years. Credit must also go to Lee Beasley, the lead technician and the main training officer as far as the test scheme is concerned. And that's 4 members to note, Chair.
I can just come in on the topic then of the FPCA, Chair. In that sense, we actually had our inspection yesterday from the FPCA inspectors who were back on site, and it's a very rigorous programme that they put crematoriums through, obviously, to ensure that they meet the appropriate standards. The good news is that we had the verbal indication that we had sort of passed with flying colours yesterday and everything was in order. They will be preparing us with a more detailed report explaining their findings, and that will be brought back to the committee at a future meeting. But just to confirm that test came yesterday.
Off the record, I heard that the crematorium passed with flying colours. I'm sure on behalf of the committee, Clive, will you take our congratulations back to both Alex and Lee, and to the whole staff in general for yesterday's FPCA inspection as well.
Yeah, will do, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Christmas service, agenda item 8.
Chair, it's proposed with the members' approval, please, that the 2023 Christmas service of remembrance will be held in the chapel on December the 5th at 5 p.m. That's a Tuesday, December the 5th at 5 p.m. The intention, as in the report, is to include perhaps items not normally associated with Christmas, but the chapel is used a great deal by humanists and for non-religious services, and I feel that they should also be included in this. And there's one of the humanist officiants on board and she will talk about what Christmas means to them, to humanists. The service will also be led by Reverend Jonathan Durley of the Porthcawl and Kenfig Hill ministry area. Yeah, and it will be a religious stroke secular service, hopefully attracting all members of the public for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Wayne?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm all for equality. I'm all for multi-faith functions, but I would stress that Christmas is a Christian celebration broadly, and I hope that the service is broadly Christian-based. Thank you.
The service will be, it will reflect Christian beliefs, but I do believe that there is a place for for the secular side of Christmas as well, as the chapel is used, not only for Christian services, it is used for non-religious services as well.
Okay, Wayne? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so recommendations on page 30 there, that we approve the holding of the Christmas service on the 5th of December. Are we all okay?
If notification could come out sooner, so we can get in our diaries, etc.
Okay.
Because it's but for everyone, the whole council, etc.
Sure, Tammy can sort that out at the press of a button. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that. So moving on then, agenda item 9 are the commission figures again from January, beg your pardon, from January to June of this year. Clive?
Thank you, Chair. Members will note that for the first 6 months of 2023, cremation figures, with the exception of May, have been higher than those of 2022. In actual fact, it's about 100 more from January to June. If we move into July, and I appreciate that's not covered in this report, but just for interest, we undertook nearly 160 cremations, the most during any July since the Crem opened. If you're going to ask me why, I really don't know. But, we have been busy this year. And July was about 60 more than other Julys. And that report is for members to note.
Paul?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I don't go into conspiracy theories, Chair, but I believe that the death rates are still high after COVID. They haven't dropped back to pre-COVID levels, is the sort of things I see. I don't know if it's just remain reflected in the fact that you're busy, or if it's just a bit of a conspiracy. But so my understanding of it is that death rates are still higher than they would have been pre-COVID average, year on year, apparently. I don't know if that's true, I don't know.
Yes, I think that is correct. It's also interesting to note that I'm also told that Swansea is relatively quiet. And I know there are issues with Christchurch as far as their main chapel being closed. We have picked up a few funerals from the Bridgend area, but not that many to to explain why the the numbers are up.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With our fixed annual cremation numbers, if we are exceeding that on a regular basis, a couple of options. Is there scope, because we get penalized if we go over financially our target number? I can't remember, it's about 1,500 or something like that. So if we're going over that target now on a regular basis, is there scope for renegotiation to increase that number to become relevant in relation to the numbers that we are now seeing of cremations?
Rina, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the contract states that there's a £5 surcharge per cremation over 1,450, but we've exceeded that in the last couple of years and they've not actually charged us it. it is in the contract, so obviously there is always an opportunity for them to charge it, but they don't seem to be exercising that at the minute.
That's correct. The contract will expire 2025 after the 10 years since we had the cremators put in. This is some contract will have to be negotiated, and I'm sure the question of numbers of cremations will be raised at that time.
Is there for them, because this may be a legal question, because they haven't at an end of year billed us for the excess, could they at the end of the contract take an accumulation and say, oh, by the way, you've exceeded it by 500, 600, 700 over the life of the contract, and here's a bill for the end of contract to settle the score?
In answer to your question, yes, it is a potential that could happen. They would only be able to go back a certain period because of limitation periods ultimately that would exist under contracts, but it is something we do need to be conscious of going forward, absolutely. As I said, we haven't had the indication to date, but it is possible as part of any renewal of services, they may come back at us as for that. We just have to keep a watchful eye then and look at the contractual arrangements in place then to try and resist any potential payments that come forward.
Okay. No other comments, right? That's just for noting on page 32 there. So last item on the agenda item 10 is any urgent items. I got one which I want to fetch up after. I think Craig, you want to?
Not necessarily an urgent item, Chair, just two bits of news ultimately just to update the committee on with regards to our sort of FBCA arrangements. So you've heard us mention quite a lot throughout this meeting about the FBCA being an important organisation as one of the main industry organisations in respect of cremation authorities. We always had a regular contact there with a gentleman called Brendan Day, who's been a great friend to Margam Crematorium over the last few years, and he's often been one of our go-to people when there are technical, operational or whatever matters that need to be considered. Brendan is going to be retiring, or if he has already in that sense. I was just going to propose I do a letter on behalf of the committee wishing him well in his retirement and to thank him for his years of support ultimately to Margam Crematorium. But in his stead, we do have somebody else now leading the charge in the FBCA, in that the chair of our committee is now this year's president of the FBCA. So I know very much well respected in that industry. So just on the officers, congratulations on the new role, Chair. And we look forward to getting good results now from the FBCA and a good service with you at the helm there almost. So just congratulations on that one point.
Thank you, Craig. Much appreciated. Thanks very much. Bob?
Yeah, I think you're hiding your light under a bushel here, Ted, because this isn't the first time that you've been elected or nominated as president. I think it's like the third. You are well respected in the industry, and you represent particularly Neath, Talbot and our crematorium to the highest standard. So it's not coincidence that this is, I think it's the third, correct me if I'm wrong, that you've been invited to take this role, and that is indeed then reflected on the crematorium itself. So congratulations.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else want to press anything up now before I give my item? No?
Well, the beer's on you, Ted, and the Quins when I see you next.
I knew he was smirking for something. I could see it, but then right. I've been asked on a few occasions, and I myself have asked a question as to why the Margam Crematorium meetings are held on a Friday afternoon at 2:15. And the answer I've been given repeatedly is the fact that it goes back historically to when Margam was first opened. And Friday afternoon back in the day was a quiet period. And so they were able to accommodate meetings down in Margam at this time. I've spoken to Craig, and there is no reason, if colleagues agree with me, that we need to keep to a Friday afternoon at 2:15. We don't meet down the crematorium anymore. We meet here. It's hybrid. And it just seems to make a bit more sense to me that we try to get out of this Friday afternoon slot. And I, providing colleagues are in agreement, I can ask Tammy to go and have a look, and whether it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, whatever colleagues think. But I just think it's a silly time, although I understand the reasons why. But it was done from 1969. Well, it's a hell of a long time ago. I don't know if anybody got any thoughts similar, or whether they oppose it. Greg?
That's no problem, and Chair. We can certainly look to see what options are potentially available to us. So we normally set our meeting calendar at the AGM. So obviously next year will be the AGM in May, so we can agree a revised schedule for that, and we can also link in with our colleagues in Bridgend to make sure obviously there's nothing there that will conflict ultimately for our Bridgend members. We have about 2 or 3 meetings in the diary before the AGM in May, one in December, probably one in February or March. What we'll do is we'll work with our Democratic Services colleagues to see if we can identify some suitable dates, and we'll come out to members in due course if you're content that you would like to look at changing the time and date for it. As you mentioned earlier on, it used to be held on a Friday afternoon because we used to hold it at the crematorium. Now we've embarked on the hybrid way of meetings. We're free to try and build it into any way that we can. So we'll try and find something that accommodates all members.
Okay, I'm assuming we're all happy with that. See if we can just change the date. Okay, great, excellent. Thank you very much. So I can't see any other indications for anybody to speak. So on that note, I thank you all for attending and declare the meeting closed. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.